businesses and providers and various supports. Um, Today, in terms of looking at this particular area around energy and water consumption, which is part of a series of work that we're doing at the minute in terms of helping our businesses to be more sustainable and adopting more sustainable practices. We have someone who's much more knowledgeable in this area than I to take you through the session today. So we have Andrew Mowat here, and Andrew is our Energy Policy Officer here at the Council, so deals with this day in and day out. So what he's going to share with you over the next 45 minutes or so is very practical, real, daily stuff that Andrew deals with. And I suppose he will be sharing it from a kind of a general business point of view, but it's things that can be adopted into any business and your tourism business as well. And then I suppose to bring it to life and to really hit on the practicalities and how it can help your business, we have Brian Leonard here from Corley Activity Centre. Brian and Corley participated, I suppose, well, they've always, I suppose, really practiced sustainable practices naturally through what they do. But recently as well, they had participated in the Geopark sustainability training. So really very much do practice what they preach in terms of their business. So Brian's going to take you through, like, I suppose, a real life case study in terms of what they've been doing, and I suppose anything, maybe challenges, opportunities as well that happen through adopting sustainable practices. So I suppose at this point I'm going to pass you over to Andrew. If you do have any questions, I suppose, throughout it, you can use the chat box, raise your hand. As there's a small number of us, so there's no problem with taking questions as we go. And we'll help where we can. But as I say, I'm going to hand over to Andrew now, and he will start his presentation, and we'll check in after that. Over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. Just checking, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Just a quick introduction. I suppose, thanks, Karen, give me a brief introduction, but my name's Andrew Mowat, and I am the Energy Policy Officer from Anoma District Council. I work within the Climate Change Sustainable Development Department, so we deal with anything to do with kind of carbon baselining, carbon reduction, all that good stuff. And today my presentation is just going to give you a quick overview of some simple steps you can take to lower your energy and water consumption, and also look at some energy management fundamentals that you can employ in your business to hopefully help you lower your bills. So I've just started with the basics. I'll fire through this. It's all, I'm sure you're all familiar with these things, but I mean, it's always good for a wee refresher. So I suppose just in order to reduce your heating consumption, I suppose just ensure your building's heated as efficiently as possible. There's a number of steps you can take. I suppose the first thing would be to ensure that your boiler controls are all set correctly. You know, if you have any sort of variance in your schedule throughout the week, you know, for instance, weekday and weekend, make sure there's a good setback, you know, for the weekend, if you have different opening hours, or, you know, making sure that your timers are all set well. And also for maybe holiday closures, things like that, make sure your controls are all set well. It's useful to make sure that your controls aren't tampered with. This is one thing I would find quite a lot in many of our buildings. It's good to have maybe your building manager, or maybe a single member of staff responsible for the heating controls, because I'm sure you'll all find, you know, if there's a lot of individual tuning going on, you can end up overheating or underheating depending on what sort of premises you have. Setting your room to the correct temperature in sort of your office environment, or maybe a stationary environment, you'd be maybe looking 19, 20 degrees would be a reasonable set point. And then maybe in your sort of your corridors or storerooms or anything like that, you could set them back a lot further, probably maybe around 14 or maybe even lower. Just on that note, turning down your thermostat by 1 degree can save up to 8% in your heating bills. So, you know, you might think there's not a great difference between 22 and 20 degrees, but in the greater scheme of things, it can actually mean a great deal of difference. Yes,
Andrew, I'm sorry. Can I stop you there?
You can.
Will you move that little picture of me in the bottom of your screen, because it's covering the presentation for some people. Apparently they don't like seeing me twice. Thank you very much.
I thought that was a nice bonus for everyone.
I know. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it, but others don't. Thank you.
Not a bother. Yeah, sorry, just back to it. Making sure there's you have a good deadband between if you have an aircon system and a heating system, making sure there's a good, so for instance, having your heating sort of kick off at 19 degrees and maybe your aircon kicking in at 25, so that kind of you're not heating and cooling your building simultaneously throughout the day. You know, obviously simple things, avoid natural ventilation whenever your heating system's on. I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of that. And obviously avoiding personal heating devices is one that I would find a lot throughout our estate as well. With the price of electricity at the moment, you know, for instance, a 2 kilowatt personal heating device, you know, convection heater will use around 50p an hour at the moment. You know, if you have multiple of those going in your building at any given time, you know, that can seriously impact your energy bills. Similarly, in the summertime, if you have an aircon system, you know, a 3 kilowatt aircon system, use around 75p per hour. At the same time, you'd be, you know, if you maybe opt for maybe natural ventilation, you know, open the doors, windows, get a good airflow through the building. You know, that'll save you on your aircon bills. Space layout. Where people sit can make a big difference in how warm they feel. Everybody feels heat differently as well, so you know it's a good consideration. Locating, you know, away from windows where there's potential for draft. Making sure your radiators are not obstructed. That's a big thing. Maybe a radiator reflector panel behind to make sure your heat's not being absorbed by your external walls. It's another good saving. And again, make sure your thermostats are set in the right position for each room. Maybe if your thermostats are in direct sunlight, or maybe they're beside a window, or you know, that'll affect how your building's heated. Your doors and windows. As I'm sure you're aware, just preventing cold air entering a building can save you a lot on your energy bills. This is something we do in some of our buildings. There's still a number of our buildings of our office buildings have single glazed windows. So some of them we have temporary glazing put in, maybe PVC. PVC secondary glazing, you know, just to basically keep the heat in, prevent drafts, and you know it's a temporary solution, but you know at the end of the day, it's cheaper than you know, replacing with maybe double or triple glaze in the short term. Obviously, you're gonna prefer to, you know, upgrade your building fabric, but you know it can be a good temporary solution, cheap as well. You know, if you do have budgetary constraints. Touched on this a wee bit, but just making sure your thermostats are located in the right position, they're set to the right temperature. Maybe upgrading your thermostats to a digital version. You know, maybe, you know, it's easier to understand, easier to set, and easier to kind of, you know, program for weekends. You know, program a setback. Basically, having more control over your heating systems is always beneficial. Having zonal controls, you know, is going to give you better control of your heating system. So lighting, again, very simple. The longer lights are on for, the more energy they're using. So areas are often lit unnecessarily, and as I'm sure, you know, staff will have a not my money mentality. So, you know, it's good to train staff, and you know that lighting can be a significant cost. Maximizing natural lighting, making sure your windows aren't obstructed, having lighting controls. Maybe, you know, you could have daylight sensors, just automatically kicks on and off when as they're needed. And again, making sure if you have timers, making sure they're all set correctly, and maybe out of hours if you have security lighting on the exterior building. These can be quite energy intensive, so just make sure they have maybe either daylight sensors or that they're correctly timed to ensure they come on and off at the right time. Just striking a good balance between security and your energy use. Yeah, just that's kind of I've went over that a wee bit, but also occupancy sensors are another good thing. You know, you don't just, instead of having to manually turn your switches on and off, it's good to have occupancy sensors. Just they'll go on and off. You know, you won't have to worry about it. Office equipment. These can be big energy users, particularly in the office environment. It's very easy to you know, make savings on these. You know, office equipment can be a significant, particularly in the office environment, can be a significant percentage of your costs. So avoiding unnecessary standby usage is a big one. You know, you might think that, you know, maybe a few watts is not significant, but if you consider that that's being used 16 hours a day for 365 days a year, you know, even something as small as 3 or 4 watts can maybe end up, you know, £10 a year. So is worth, you know, it's all about small savings, you know, making savings where you can. Opting for the eco settings on your PCs. You can probably demonstrate here. There's a wee battery down the corner. You can slide it across to the best battery life. You know, small saving again, but if you have a number of devices in your building, it's gonna all add up. Kitchen appliances. Making sure that these are, you know, well maintained, regularly maintained. Making sure there's no ice buildup in these. Buildup of ice can affect the air circulation and thermostatic temperature regulation in fridges and freezers. So, you know, defrosting them regularly is gonna save you money, especially if they're on 24 hours a day. And similarly, you know, if you are thinking about upgrading, this is one of the ones where it's definitely worth considering your energy rating, considering they're on all the time. You know. Simple things, damaged door seals on fridges and freezers, make sure they're replaced and repaired as soon as possible. Just minimizing how often the door's opened, how long it's open for, minimizing these things. And there's also, if you have the fridges and freezers set so that they're not using, you know, they're set for the minimum temperature, you're not excessively cooling. And food and drink preparation, obviously opt for the least energy intensive method of food and drink preparation. Maybe microwave, you know, is probably the least energy, and then, you know, you get your air fryer, and then obviously your main cooker. And then it can be worth investing in maybe in a hot water geyser, maybe if you have a very large hot water requirement throughout the day. It can be energy efficient to invest in a geyser as opposed to your kettle, which is, you know, can be up to sort of 2 kilowatt consumption. So it can be worth investing in a geyser. So I was just going to give you a quick run through of an effective energy management cycle that you can put in. You can add to your management cycle. So I suppose the first step is to get your baseline data. Then maybe carry a walk around audit. Just, you know, see what devices are, you know, might not need to be on, or what lights don't need to be on, or perhaps what options you can go for to reduce your energy consumption. Then prioritize these, make the changes, and then review to see how effective they've been. Obviously, the first step, baseline data, obviously requires you to know exactly how much energy you're using. So you can do this by monitoring your energy consumption through regular electricity meter or oil or gas meter readings, or you can look at your electricity bills or your fuel purchase invoices and work it out that way. Of course, you'd have to check your electricity bills to make sure these are based on actual readings and not estimates, because these can be significantly, I'll go into that in a wee bit more detail later on, but energy benchmarking is the assessment and analysis of your energy and your water use, if you're adding that in. And it allows you to identify areas where your efficiency might be lacking and decide on potential improvements, and to make decisions about your long-term energy management goals. So it's always the first step, is to know you can't make effective decisions unless you know exactly where your energy is being used. So this is just this is a sample, kind of. This is one of our buildings. This is Enniskillen Castle, I believe. This is quite granular data. This building is a half-hourly meter, so this gives you a good idea of where your electricity is being used. Maybe, you know, a lot of your businesses might be sort of on non-half-hourly meters, so you might not have access to this type of data. But taking regular meter readings will allow you to kind of identify how much you're using overnight. You know, you might be able to identify some excessive overnight use. You know, if you're using a lot of energy out of hours. You know, taking morning and evening reads can help you identify that, and it also is useful to build up seasonal trends. You know, you're gonna, obviously, energy in particular. You know, perhaps in tourism businesses, it'll probably be a sort of an inverse trend compared to this. You know, in terms of electricity use, you'll probably have increased consumption. You know, that kind of coincides with your tourism season. But you know, it's worth noting, and it also allows you to sort of predict what sort of, you know, how much you're expecting to pay for your bills. You know, it just allows good decision making. This is one that I'm going to spend a wee bit of time on this, because I think this is very this is very useful, and maybe it's something that you haven't looked at before. Understanding your utility bills, it can be a complicated process. There's a lot of different rates and unit charges. There's a lot of sort of tertiary charges you might not understand. It'll pay to basically familiarize yourself with bills and to see what you're being charged for. Just as an example, this is one of our sites we have in the council here. It's Lenamore. It's a public convenience. It's located in Omagh. So as you can see from this bill, in a single month we get charged 26,000 for a single month. Whenever our normal consumption is somewhere between 50 and maybe 150, depending on the month of the year. So billing errors do occur, and they're more regular than you would think. So being aware of how much you're being charged, what you expect to be charged, what your unit rate should be. Similarly, here's another example down here. This is in a particular, I think it was November of 2022, we received a bill where we were getting charged £23.95 per kilowatt hour instead of 23.95 pence per kilowatt hour. So for a very small consumption of 85 kilowatt hours, we were being charged £2,000. So these are errors. All their systems, all the electricity suppliers' systems are computerized. Errors do occur. Since I started my job just over 2 years ago, I've identified just somewhere between 80 and 100,000 pounds worth of errors just through supplier error and errors in bill production. So it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with sort of the different components of the bill and be able to identify these errors because they do happen. Ensuring your bills are based on actual readings is another thing. Electricity suppliers, a lot of the time they'll aim probably for 6 months. Get a reading every 6 months. There's some of our sites across the estate maybe wouldn't just ones that are rural, or maybe wouldn't be frequently visited. Maybe could have gone 18 months without an actual reading. We're doing a lot of work now to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. But it just basically it can lead to being overcharged unnecessarily. Making sure your energy bill relief scheme or energy bill discount scheme is being applied. So from April 23 to April 24, there's what's called the energy bill discount scheme. Basically, it captures your electricity consumption at 30.2 pence per kilowatt hour. So if your unit price goes above 30.2, it'll cap it. But we had an issue last year in the previous scheme whereby the electricity supplier forgot to apply this in a month, so we ended up being charged, I think it was just over 20,000 again, being charged 20,000 that we shouldn't have been. So of course I had to flag it up with it. But as I said, mistakes do happen, and it's worth familiarizing yourself with the bills to be able to identify these. And again, taking regular meter readings and knowing how much you're spending and when is going to help you in that process. So just a quick bit about carbon reporting. I'm not too sure where you are with your journey towards carbon baselining, but taking a carbon baseline is a good way to quantify the impact that your business is having on the environment. It can provide information needed to implement an effective sustainability and carbon reduction strategy, and also to demonstrate your business's commitment to combating climate change. So currently, Fermanagh Council tracks Scope 1 and 2 emissions, and we're currently working on Scope 3 emissions, which is going to be a legislative requirement in the coming years. So just for a wee bit of information for yourselves, that's our carbon baseline. I think we produce around 4,100 tonnes of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. That's Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. But having a carbon strategy, can strengthen your brand's reputation as a credible and robust climate leader, and it can also differentiate yourselves from other competitors by advertising yourselves as being a conscientious business. And it also provides a rationale for some investments you're thinking of, having basically a rationale beyond monetary ones. In other words, sort of how much carbon you're going to save by maybe investing in electrification or maybe green fuels or renewable energy. Or it's always worth thinking about. Engaging your workforce is an important one. Kind of all the simple, the simple things I went through at the start. Having a sense of ownership of the energy use among key staff, managers, team leaders. It's all, it all works together to create an effective team. Involving keeping your staff informed, maybe asking for suggestions and maybe what they think would be a good advice going forward, or good measures you can implement. And again, it's good to acknowledge good practice, among staff. Staff do implement energy saving interventions. It's worth highlighting that. And maybe try a consultation with staff, because at the end of the day, staff would be very familiar with how the building's run. They'll be able to identify where energy is possibly being wasted. So it's good to get everyone involved. So just a wee bit about energy investments. If you're thinking about maybe a fabric first approach is a relatively simple concept. So basically, you're just reducing your building's heat loss. It's kind of the first step on your journey to sustainable building. So that's affordable to heat, of course. Insulating your lofts, cavity wall, roof spaces. Those are all major causes of heat loss. Mentioned earlier, double glazing, triple glazing, or even secondary glazing as a temporary solution can reduce your heat loss through your windows by up to 50%. And again, if you're planning any of these, just consider the U value of any improvements made, which is basically a measure of the thermal effectiveness of your buildings, sort of your building's components and your wall or roof or windows or doors. And maybe upgrading your boiler can be a cost-effective way as well. Upgrading to a modern condensing boiler from a non-condensing boiler with limited controls can potentially reduce your bills by between 10 and 30%, depending on your building. Very simple. I'm sure everyone's aware of the benefits of LED lighting by now, but LED lighting is a simple investment. I suppose you could call it low-hanging fruit. They're the most energy efficient bulbs, use up to 90% less than traditional lamps, and last 3 times longer than sort of your compact fluorescent bulbs or other alternatives, and they're going to save you money. It's just simple, easy, and they also reduce your costs associated with maintenance, downtime, because they have a longer lifespan, and normally there's maybe a 1 to 5 year payback depending on the wattage of your bulbs and how frequently they're used. Again, touched on this earlier, but just purchasing the most energy efficient equipment possible. Obviously, all your appliances have a rating system. So basically, a poorly rated appliance may seem cheaper whenever you're buying it, but once the life cycle costs are considered, it's probably going to be much higher. So it can often, it'll often pay off to spend that bit more, to get a more efficient device. And this particularly, as I said, this is particularly important in cold appliances which operate 24 hours a day. Reviewing your energy tariff or your electricity tariff is another. It can be a good idea to arrange a call with your electricity provider and discuss whether you're availing of the most appropriate tariff. So there's 3 main ones. We kind of have a split in our estate. We have 136 electricity accounts, so we kind of there's different tariffs are more suitable for different types of buildings. Fixed rate is just kind of if you have a lot of consumption during peak hours, which would be kind of just your 9 to 5 kind of normal operation hours. So a fixed rate would probably be the most appropriate. Nightsaver provides discounted electricity during nighttime periods. If you have a lot of overnight consumption, such for instance, if you have electric storage heaters, or if you have a lot of maybe cold appliances, if you have a lot of refrigeration or freezing needs, or perhaps even if you have, if you charge electric vehicles overnight, your Nightsaver might be able to provide some savings. Just worth getting in touch with your electricity provider, and similarly, your Weekender provides as the name suggests, provides discounted electricity during the evening and weekend. This is probably cost effective for hospitality businesses such as restaurants or bars or the like. There's also more. I'll not go into it, but if you're a larger company and you have a half hourly meter, there's also a number of other things you could do. Capacity charge might be something worth looking at that might be able to additionally save you money. I suppose just I'll touch on maybe, you might think it's beneficial to get a professional audit. Energy audits, just an assessment of your building's energy needs and the efficiency. It helps you identify sort of where your energy being used and helps prioritize your energy uses according and sort of ranks them from the greatest to the least cost effective opportunities. So as you can see at the bottom here, there's a number of recommended measures here. So increasing loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, draft proofing. So, and it gives you a rough indicative cost and your typical savings over. So maybe that might be suitable for you. If you're thinking about investing in renewable generation, solar PV is a good place to start. In Northern Ireland, you're probably looking at somewhere around a 10-year payback. But if you consider that the solar PV is a life cycle of around 20 years, there's potentially good savings to be made. Fermanagh Council currently has 3 properties with rooftop PV units, and obviously with any new builds that we have, we're going to look to have solar PV incorporated in it. It's just, I suppose, one consideration would be to see if your building's appropriate for it. Having a building with a roof that's got a south orientation, and preferably pitch, maybe a pitch of angle of 30 to 40 degrees. But of course, you can there could be certain mounting units but basically a south-facing roof is going to give you the best results. And it's also important to make sure that your building's energy consumption matches the generation of the units if you don't have storage capacity. So having sort of a high consumption between sort of your normal 9 to 5 hours, you'd be beneficial having solar PV. Whereas if your usage is higher in the evening, maybe, or it might not be as well suited. Funding opportunities, the Northern Ireland Sustainable Energy Programme, something might be worth looking at. The majority of it's targeted low-income domestic households, but there's also funds dedicated to non-domestic customers, consumers. This is something that we ourselves have been doing recently. We had a small LED improvement project at Omagh Leisure Centre. We got around 1,500 in funding for that, but there's a bigger project going on. I think it'll probably be somewhere in the region of maybe 50,000 going on at Omagh Leisure Centre this year. So, that's 20% funding for that can be a significant saving. And again, this also applies to intelligent heating controls or solar PV systems. So if you are thinking of doing these upgrades, then it might be worth looking at the Sustainable Energy Programme. The application process isn't too complicated, so be something worth looking at. And I'll just go on to a quick bit about water management. I suppose reducing water use makes sense from a business perspective. It helps you save money, enhance the reputation, and preserves natural resources. Some of the drivers obviously are going to save money, reduce your carbon footprint. Not sure whether you're aware, but the water treatment process, there's carbon, there's scope 3 emissions to account for in that, and obviously it's good for the environment. It's going to give your business some good green credentials, just to sort of showcase your commitment to protecting the environment. I suppose the first step, again, just establishing where you're consuming your water. Basically monthly or weekly readings, evening and morning readings can be used to identify leaks or unexpected consumption out of hours. Identifying trends, again, because most of your tourism business, you're probably generally there'll be a variance where your usage will increase in the summer months as opposed to the winter months. But it's good to be able to identify these trends to know where your money's being spent. And being able to sort of develop a water balance for your company. It's useful to identify roughly where 90% of your metered consumption's going. So if you have urinals or showers, drinking fountains, if you wash vehicles, it's all useful to establish your consumption. The Consumer Council also provides a lot of guidance on water management for small businesses. So, it can be worth getting in touch with them. They provide free advice for small to medium businesses. So it might be worth getting in touch with them. So saving money in your bill, in your water bills. This is another thing that we've been looking at in the council. If your business is eligible for a domestic allowance, that domestic allowance means your business is eligible for 100 cubic meters of water supply every 6 months and sewerage. So if you're eligible and your business pays rates, then it's worth checking your bill to make sure this is being applied properly. This can be worth around £260 a year, and if it hasn't been applied in previous years, you can be back paid for up to 6 years. So that can be worth around £1,500 if you haven't been receiving that for the last 6 years and you should have been. Similarly, this can also be applied to sewerage charges. And again, this can be worth up to £425 per year, or a potential rebate of up to £2,500. So again, it's worth checking. If you pay business rates, just make sure you're getting your domestic allowance. And I'm not sure whether you'd be aware, but a large portion of your water bill can be made up by your water meter supply size. So that's basically the internal diameter of the pipe serving your building. This is something that we find, sometimes basically the system, you could be on NI Water's system as having an incorrect pipe size. And as you can see below, this can have a significant, this is in pounds, so having the incorrect pipe size can have a significant effect on your annual bill. So it's worth checking to make sure this is all correct. And another thing that we do quite regularly is non-return to sewerage claims. So if you've received if you've had a leakage on your property, maybe through frost or what have you, there's any number of reasons that you've had a leakage, it's possible to submit a non-return to sewerage claim. Basically, it means this, the pipes, the water that's leaked from the pipe hasn't returned to the sewer, so you can basically claim back any sewerage costs. And because sewerage is actually a higher cost than your supply cost, it can make up a large part of your bill. So it's worth just checking. If you have had a leak, this can also be back paid for a number of years. If you've had maybe an underground leak and that it's only just been identified and fixed, you can claim back. You can reclaim your sewerage costs for a number of years. So as long as you can prove that this has happened and been recently rectified. So that's also something to look for. Sustainable water use. Investing in sustainable water collection is a good way to save on your water bills as well. Maybe boreholes might only be might only work for if you have a very large water consumption. We have a borehole at Omagh Leisure Complex that helps serve for our grey water needs, and it's used in our sanitary devices in Omagh Leisure Complex, and we have a significant saving through that. That picture shows one of our refuse staff washing one of the refuse lorries. But that particular shed has a rainwater collector on the roof, which feeds our our cleaning needs. So it might be something worth looking at if you are looking at sustainable water collection. And this is also you can also receive a discounted sewerage tariff if you do have one of these. Again, surface water might only be sort of appropriate for larger businesses, might not be appropriate for your small or medium businesses, And just as a final, I'll not go into the water efficiency too much, but there's a number of guides that Invest NI produced These are very useful. There's a lot of information involved in these, and I'd highly recommend maybe going on to Invest NI and looking at these guides, because they're very useful. And I've also signposted a number of other websites that are also useful and might be able to help you on your water conservation journey. And you'll be glad to know that is the end of my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Andrew. There's a lot of information in that.
Andrew,
go ahead, Paddy.
Sorry, can I ask a question? You see, in terms of traditional fluorescents and LEDs, do the bulbs, are the LED bulbs compatible with the traditional fluorescent light fittings? So if, you've got 5 tubes in a sort of a square meter, but you've got 20 of them in an office, like you have a lot of tubes, but can you change them all, or do you need to change the whole fitting?
Yeah, no, there is most of them are compatible. I mean, you need to be done on a case by case basis, but I mean, your tube lighting, you can also get more efficient tubes. If you go from maybe you can retrofit from a T12 to a T4 or something like that. But most of them have got LED alternatives that you can upgrade to relatively easily. And if you did want to do that, there's the NICEP funding available for that.
There's funding to change over them, is there?
Yeah, there's 20% part funding for any LED retrofit you want to do. The funding's basically is allocated on a first come first served basis. Normally starts around May. So I think that for this year the funding's been used up, but I think it'll start again in May 24. So if you are thinking about it, might be a good good idea to aim for that sort of time period. Maybe, or even if you have your application sorted and ready to submit, you'd be just to make sure you're ready for it.
And one other question I had, you see, you're talking about the water supply maybe going into the building. If I picked it up right, there are different size pipes going into the building. How do you actually figure out what size of a pipe's going into your building?
I suppose if you had building schematics, I'm not sure whether you'd have that sort of information available to you. If that's all beyond digging up the ground and checking. Maybe I'm not too sure whether you can actually get NI Water to sort of give you that information. Whether they have actual verified or whether it's an estimate. I'm not too sure about that. But it's just if you're aware of your building and you know what the pipe size is. That could, it's worth checking just against your build.
If you're in the main town on the main street, so you've got the little stop cover out on the street, and you lift that up and you can see the sort of meter and stuff in there. So Joe Public wouldn't be able to tell from lifting the cover and figuring it out now.
No, it's not that simple. You might need some sort of specialist help.
Right, okay. Dead on. Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no immediate questions, we might ask Brian to share. I suppose just to say thank you, Andrew. I say a lot of very practical stuff in there, and I think I was on a different session this morning about Lean and Green. It's the same message about starting small and doing what you can do, and the biggest thing about knowing what your own consumption is, because you can only change it once you know what you're actually using and when you're using it and stuff. So I think that's really, really good information. So thank you. And as I say, what plan now is we'll ask Brian to come in and share what they have done as a business. And then if there's any more questions at the end, we can come back to Andrew. Will still be here with us, so we can ask both, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. I'll just try to get this show up here, the slideshow up and running here, Karen. Yep. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, that's up there now, Brian.
So we tested this earlier. I'm just going to stay on this screen because the full screen feature doesn't seem to work when sharing. Nice to meet you all. My name's Brian. I work at I'm kind of managing here at Carley Activity Centre. My parents, Marius and Isabel, would have previously done most of the work in terms of sustainability and energy saving, water saving. But I'm just going to give you a bit of a history, and it's kind of been something that we've looked at since the start of forming the business. So it's not really anything new. It was probably less trendy back then to be energy efficient and eco, so it was definitely more of a challenge. But I'll give you a bit of a rundown of what we have done. I'm not going to go into exact statistics and figures because I don't have all of that in front of me, but I'm going to give you an idea on a practical basis what we do, and it may or may not relate to your business. We're quite a small business, so we have very small staff, really, only myself full-time at the moment. We formed the business in 1994, so we've been going almost 30 years. And like I said before, from the very start, it's been an emphasis on eco and being as energy efficient as possible. In 2006, my father, Marius, we were kind of part of a group, Greenbox, which was a cross-border initiative to try and promote the EU flower. EU flower was a label accredited to businesses that were actively involved in energy conservation and aiming to protect the environment. I don't know an awful lot about it because, as I say, that was back in 2006. I wasn't directly involved, but just to give you an idea of how far back the kind of steps were taken to actively conserve energy. So really today, making a difference. This is just a wee screen grab from our website. I'll give you the link afterwards if you wish. You can go and check it on the website. It's just on our homepage, and it just gives you a bit of a rundown of the things that we actively do on site. So just looking at the image here, in terms of water, we try to reduce flow of water. So in terms of like the showers, taps, it's all reduced flow, so that unfortunately we don't have any power showers or anything like that. And it's a conscious decision to reduce flow of water to try and minimize the amount of water consumption on site. Watering of plants, anything used on the grounds here is also done using lake water, which is basically our rain collection. We have the lake at our disposal, so for watering plants we just use lake water as opposed to tap water. Then that kind of brings me to the cottages. So the cottages were quite an old style when we first moved here. They were single glazed windows, economy 7 heating, so that has all been modernized. They're double glazed, they have central heating, oil fired central heating, but we also did add solar panels on the roof, and they're not the PV solar panels feeding energy back into the grid. They are heating the water system inside the cottages. So back again to the water, especially during the summer months when there's a lot of light, it will constantly heat the water for hot showers or hot water for washing dishes, therefore minimizing the amount of oil and electricity used for heating up water. The winter months, it is, as a drawback, the winter months there's a little bit less light, so you do notice you're having to use the oil fired or electric a little bit more, but it is minimal. So just to finish up, the last kind of thing we do on site in terms of is the kind of 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. So an example of that is just upcycling some old washing machine drums as fire pits. There's many other wee bits and pieces that we do on site, just trying to repurpose stuff rather than throwing it out and being wasteful. It's a day-to-day thing which we do enforce. Bins is probably another one, which is very, we notice all the time. Recycle bins, a lot of people are getting on to the day-to-day recycling, but there's still a huge number of people, especially whenever people are on holidays, they tend to forget their habits and they just dump everything in the one bin. We do have a little notification inside the cottages to remind people of recycling, what color bin is for what, and we do check the bins before we put them out as well once people have left, because we do find an enormous amount of recyclable materials in our green or black bin, which is the normal rubbish here in Fermanagh. Excuse me. So that is still a work in progress, and there are drawbacks to the color system of the bins, because Fermanagh seems to be different to a lot of other places in the north of Ireland and in the south. So that's a constant challenge, is to try and get the recycling properly. We did experiment with composting with the cottages. We do compost ourselves in our household, but composting with customers and cottages did not go very well. We ended up finding rubbish and all sorts of stuff in the compost bins. So for now, we've stopped doing that, and we may revisit that as people become more aware of their rubbish and their waste. So really, what we're doing to bring you up to date, we've kind of once COVID hit, we had to rethink our kind of business plan, because the bread and butter of our business would have been school groups, youth groups, and that would have taken us through May, June, July. And with COVID, we had to rethink our whole kind of what we were going to offer. We had no school groups, no youth groups. So we had to explore the kind of individual or small group market. And we decided to go along the lines of this outdoor forest spa. Now, the hot tub and sauna that you can see that in front of you are completely self-sufficient. They're wood-fired. They do not rely on electricity. The only thing is the water, which is used to fill the hot tub, which unfortunately still does come from the tap at this stage, because we haven't got a filtration system in place to be able to use the lake water. The lake water is very peaty around here, so it's quite difficult to filter that out. Another wee shot of the sauna there from the inside. Our location is key. You can see for yourself with the view, and again, all the wood. These are wood burning stoves. All the wood which is used is harvested, cut and seasoned by ourselves from the forest on site. So there's absolutely no wastage. Any kind of dead trees, any wood which we're thinning out in the forest gets seasoned out. It gets cut up for firewood, and it's used in the cottages, in the wood burning stoves, and in the sauna and hot tub. And that's really it, bringing us kind of up to date. We like to keep groups small, and kind of groups of families or friends small, and we've stuck with that kind of ethos. The reason being, it's lower impact. It means that you can keep your businesses more sustainable. And as we've realized, a lot of businesses have had to shut down because they've maybe tried to go too big too soon, and the fact that it also reduces the impact on the environment around us means that it is going to be sustainable for longer. I've just got a wee video at the end here, just to kind of give you, if you don't know who we are, just to give you a quick, it's only a minute long, and it'll just give you a quick idea of what we do here. I'll just try to see if it plays for you now. It may not. Let's see. Not sure if you could see that, Karen. Is that loading up for you?
No, it's not playing our side. It's playing your side.
It's just brought me onto YouTube. If it doesn't work, I can send through the link anyway. But
Definitely
you haven't
do,
got anything
Brian.
there now?
No, it's not playing. I can certainly recommend it to anybody who hasn't been down to Corley or doesn't know about it. It is absolutely fantastic, and for visitor experience, it is such a fantastic, to be able to leave people with that, I don't know, memory of this part of the world, and I just think for yourselves as businesses as well, it's good to know that that's on offer there. And I suppose, Brian, you talked about the cottages, but there is also, people can obviously book the Eco Spa as a half-day activity, or the e-bikes as an experience, I suppose. So if they're staying right across from Annanoma, it's an easy place to get to enjoy those experiences. No, so that's great, Brian. Again, it's really good to hear those practical examples of what you are doing yourselves in terms of the energy and water consumption. And I think what's important, folks, is, I mean, obviously if you're here today, you're considering it in some shape or form, but the reality is we all have to do it, and we all have to start adopting it and being more conscious and aware of how we're adopting these practices into our businesses, not just for our own business sustainability, but for the environmental sustainability as well. So what I want to do now, just before we finish out, is, if there's no more questions, I have another slide here. And again, it's just to share with you more. If you want more information, Tourism NI as well have. Let me see if I can. Can you see that slide? Yeah. Tourism NI have a whole suite of what the lean and green supports. So again, I can send out this link, or in fact, I'll put this link into the chat now. But they had actually, could be coming up in a year ago, TNI had run like a masterclass on lean and green and how to adopt it into your business. But they have any amount of templates, like in what Andrew was talking about there, in terms of, finding out your baseline, what is your consumption. They've loads of like Excel spreadsheets that are already, like all the formulas and all is done for you. You just need to put in your actual figures, what you're reading, whether it be from your bill or from your meter, and it'll shoot you out, at the end then, where you could be making savings and where you can be making things. So so I'll put this, as I say, into the chat so that you can or you just go to tourismni.com and search lean and green, and it'll bring you to it. But there's loads of video presentations, there's loads of, as I say, templates you can download if you want to start that. What I also say, if you have any more inquiries, obviously send them through to us. We're happy to, if we don't have the answers, we're happy to signpost you to someone or somewhere that has, and we're here to help you if you have any questions in this area. So I suppose, does anybody have any final questions before we go? I'm going to stop sharing because I can't get that link down to put it in the chat while I'm sharing. Are there any questions? Or
could Andrew just remind us of the name of that scheme for the LED 20% grant? Is there a name for the scheme?
Yeah, it's called the Northern Ireland Sustainable Energy Programme. If you Google it, it'll come up. It's I think it's Power NI is responsible for kind of processing application and stuff, but you'll be able to get it if you Google it.
Yeah.
I think one thing as well to add, thank you for that, Andrew, is just like Brian's doing there, he shared the link, and again, folks, it's really useful for you to see that. But the evidence is there from any consumer sentiment studies. We know that people are traveling based on, or choosing where they go to based on, if businesses are sustainable, or they're evidencing that they are adopting some form of sustainable or regenerative practices in their business. Now, obviously, price is still a factor. I mean, it depends on what markets, and some are more, like the Nordics are more likely to choose based on sustainability, and maybe the Canadians and things like that. But it is still, everything shows that that's what people are choosing for. So you need to be able to not only do it, but then to be demonstrating to your potential customers that you are doing it. So like what Corley are doing very well through that, making a difference. And I mean, they put it out there front and center to their potential customers that they are practicing it, and then people can therefore choose it based on that. It makes them feel good that they're working with a business that are doing good things their end. So as I say, it is something that we all need to just be doing more of. But if there's no more questions, I said we wanted to keep it tight to 3 o'clock, and we're just coming up to 3 o'clock. So if there's no more questions, I would just firstly thank Andrew and Brian for their time and for participation and for sharing that with us. Thank the rest of you for joining us. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There we go. I'm trying to. Oh, you're way, Brian, too.